everyone. Welcome back to the Kirkpatrick Podcast. It is Vanessa, and I am so excited to have our guest, our very own Jordan Rawlinson, the Learning and Performance Manager at Kirkpatrick Partners, here with us today, but in a little bit of a different capacity. But before we get to that, Jordan, how are you?
I'm doing so good. Summertime is one of my favorite times of year, so I'm a happy girl.
And you just got back from a trip. Tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah, I just visited Wisconsin for the first time, and it was a really nice, I think, change of pace from what I'm used to. The Midwest, I feel like, moves a little bit slower. There's more spaciousness, and or at least the area that I was in, it wasn't, in the cities. So it was a good break, a good way to catch my breath, I guess.
And you're at the birthplace of John Kirkpatrick, where he birthed the Kirkpatrick Model at the University of Wisconsin. So, I mean, like all stars
What are the
aligning.
odds?
Right, truly. And wasn't it like one of the very few states you've never been to?
Yes. Yeah, I'm working on getting to all 50, and I hadn't been to that state. So it was also very satisfying to get to cross one off the list.
Now, how many states are still left to be visited?
I think I have 10, maybe 11 left.
Crazy. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Well, before we get into all of the goodness, I just want to first and foremost thank you for all the work that you do for KP. You do the most, between designing our certification programs, facilitating them, consulting. I think one of the things when you and I first met, we talked about your goals for, your role and how you want to see it grow and evolve. You didn't want to just be an instructional designer and just, facilitate the programs. What you said was, I wanted to coach and do more of that work. What pulled you towards coaching specifically? And then what pulled you to actually write the chapter on coaching in the book, Building a Culture of Evaluation, the new Kirkpatrick Model for Performance and Innovation?
What a good question. I think why I wanted to do more coaching in my role is because my experience as a coach and also as someone who has been coached, or as we call it in the book, a coachee or a client, has just been really positive. I think training is very directed by others and coaching is self-directed. And so I think it just opens up so much more room for relationship building and creativity, innovation, to use one of our words in the title.
Mm-hmm.
Because it is such a self-discovery process. And so I wanted to do more of that because I feel like it's interesting and honestly more productive in some ways. So that was why I wanted to do more coaching in my role, because I've just loved it as a coach and a coachee. And then the reason why I wanted to write this chapter of the book, beyond just feeling honored because you asked me to do it, is because I've always seen the connection between the 4 levels and the coaching process. And I think that it hasn't been discussed in that way before, of not just how do you evaluate coaching programs, but how can the model itself actually serve as a coaching framework? Mm-hmm. I think there's a lot of obviously coaching frameworks already out there. Some of them are more complicated, but this one just feels intuitive and also bakes evaluation into the process, which I think we both agree is one of the, foundational principles that we talk about. So that is why I felt like it was a really good time for it to be a chapter in the new book too.
Was there a moment, maybe when you were coaching someone or when you were a coach, where you realized that the relationship was what was doing the heavy lifting and not the technique, the tool, or the framework?
That's a good question too. I don't know if there was necessarily one particular moment that stands out, but I know overall there is this experience that you feel in coaching where you really are in the driver's seat, and it's almost like that is good accountability, but it can also be a little bit scary if you haven't been in that position before where you really do take ownership over your development, over your behavior change. And in that experience, if you don't have that foundation of trust with whoever you're getting coached by, um, there's going to be more resistance to the process.
Mhm.
And even people that I've coached, right? If they didn't have that initial buy-in, I knew it was not going to work, right? Like, you can't coach someone who doesn't want to be coached. Um, and that's different, right? Because you can train someone who doesn't want to be trained because they're voluntold to go to the training.
Mhm.
But coaching inherently is different, I think, in that capacity. And it does all start with that foundation of the relationship and that trust.
Yeah. Psychological safety in that relationship also so important. It's actually
Mhm.
something that we saw when we did the impact study with the Department of Defense coaching program. Um, it was fascinating to see how important and impactful coaching was to help shrink the time between training and impact. And yet, where we did see that coaching wasn't effective every single time was when someone's being voluntold. And it felt punitive. Oh, well, you need to go be coached. And so we have
Yep.
to be wary. Yes, coaching can be impactful, but we also need to make sure that that person being coached is open to that experience.
Mhm.
So coaching,
100%.
speaking of, is everywhere right now. And the numbers are backing that up. So the market has grown more than 60% since 2019. And a third of Fortune 500s are currently paying for executive coaching. So there's real demand, but proof is where it gets shaky. Why do you think now, Jordan? What's driving organizations to pour money into coaching at scale?
Mm. Why are they pouring resources into coaching? My guess is that a big part of it has to do with the individualized nature of coaching, right? When everybody is kind of going through a standard program, you can only get so much out of that, I guess I could say.
Mhm.
And everyone is being expected to do the same things and yield the same results. But when you are trying to build leaders and you're trying to make sure that people have space to be themselves at work or show
Mhm.
up authentically, um, or maybe they're looking for different things in their roles, that
Mhm.
means that there has to be a little bit more of an individualized approach, which coaching allows you to do. It also, like I was saying earlier in our conversation, I think it has a lot to do with innovation because
Mhm.
it opens up more room for more ideas, and
Space to think. Yeah.
it doesn't put so much pressure on, yeah, on the coach or the trainer to have all of the answers. It's really more of the whole organization has the opportunity to contribute to new ideas and ways of being.
Yeah. Well, and so truly, the outcomes are huge, right? We saw it in um, our own studies of coaching programs. Burnout is reduced, productivity increases, intent to stay increases, right? And in a world in
Mm.
which everyone is looking to jump every 3-ish years, now data is showing it's even less than that. Having folks stay is crucial for the livelihood of the organization, because when someone jumps, that knowledge oftentimes goes with them. So, why can few organizations tell you though whether their coaching program is working or not?
Oh, I'm sure because of the nature of its individualization, right? If we are building an evaluation plan for a training where we know exactly what the outcome should be, we know exactly what their behaviors need to be, the training is designed, learning objectives, like there's a lot more structure and inherently scalability in those kinds of programs. And then when you think about coaching, if it's all self-directed, the behaviors are going to look different. The outcomes might look different. What people need to learn in the process might be different. And so there's a data management problem, I'm sure, that goes part of that. But also because I'm sure people don't think about coaching in the same way as they think about training, leading to specific outcomes, and tracking those in a similar way, rather than just how many what's the number of coaching sessions we've had, and then maybe there's a general satisfaction survey that goes along with it. It's probably because it's just not built into the process.
Yeah. It brings me back to actually a conversation I had right before we jumped on this with one of our customers about their leadership development program. And I was talking to them about Noli, the platform that we use, how it's a great way that can help track some of those things, because your coachee can put in their action plan and their goals, and we can call back to it. I think that there are tools out there that can support this kind of work. Are they as big or at scale as I think, so, our learning management systems and things like that? No. And we have to start really thinking about what we're trying to invest in when we think of tools. And I'm a huge fan of Noli, so yes, buy Noli, but also pick whatever was going to work for you. But there are ways now to do this sort of work. And it's important because we do want to be measuring those things that are more informal, not structured. And it is possible, but it's not possible using the tools that we currently have. What would be your first recommendation for a customer who says we want to evaluate coaching? Where should they start?
Where should they start? I mean, we always talk about starting with level 4, right? Starting with the end in mind. And for me, of course, I would want to understand how big is the coaching program? What are their goals with the coaching program? And how are they currently operating? I mean, I think in order for me to really make a good recommendation, I need to know where they're starting. But ultimately, what I would want to get to is how are we baking evaluation into the process, right? And that's where we can come in to help with that. I mean, again, it's not like our framework is the only one that they could use, but you really do need to be able to define, even if the results are looking different or the behaviors are going to be different across different employee groups or even across individuals, having a structure of setting goals at the beginning of a conversation, the beginning of a coaching relationship, no matter what those goals are, you're collecting the goals, right? You're getting the level 4 outcomes articulated from the coachee, and then you work your way backwards, right? Through the levels, which is exactly, what we lay out how to do in the chapter of the book.
I think what I really love what you're sharing about that is, or the thing that I was like, yeah, good job for saying that, was if we're writing those goals down and if we're actually tracking them, right? And I think sometimes I worry about coaching programs where the data is written down for the coach to remember what it is that the client's goals are. But how is that reported back up to the organization? And is it really truly tracked and measured and used for something else other than just let's remember what we're doing here? And no fault to the coach, because I think they need to learn how important measurement and evaluation is and what that data is going to do for measurement and evaluation. So this is not calling out a coach, but I do sometimes wonder how much is written down just to be a check the box for more of a remembrance, and not realizing what they have right there is data and gold for impact. So there was one line in your chapter that stopped me. I loved it. I mean, I loved everything about your chapter, to be clear. So there's research you share showing that the coach and coachee relationship, or the working alliance, predicts coaching success more than any other single factor, more than the model that's used, more than the technique. So I want to talk more about that. What is the working alliance really? And why does it outpredict everything else we'd assume matters more?
So the working alliance is that foundation of trust that we were talking about earlier. It is the relationship between the coach and the coachee in a way that's different than training instructor and participant. The coach does not have the answers, which is the opposite to what you would expect in training, where a participant coming to training is trying to get the answers from the instructor or from the curriculum. It is not that way. And that's why we call it an alliance, because a coach is walking alongside the coachee to offer support, to offer accountability, because they're not telling the coachee or the client, right, what to do or how to do it. They are opening up the container for the coachee to decide what they want to do next. So inherently, the relationship should not really have a power dynamic. It should be a supportive relationship. And in terms of why I think it's the foundational piece is the accountability factor. Because when you are trying to, let's talk about like from a health and fitness perspective, you want to work out more, you want to eat healthier, whatever. If you're doing that all on your own, I think most of us would say we're a lot more likely to slip up or not stick to our plan, even if we made the plan, as opposed to when we know that there's someone that we're going to be meeting with weekly who's going to ask us, how did you do in your plan? Did you follow
Girl,
it?
yes.
Not in a, what did you say?
I said, girl, yes. Yes.
Yes, exactly. And I think obviously we talk about building that into training solutions where post-training there is support, there is accountability, but when that can be baked directly into the learning experience in a coaching context, I feel like it is the magic sauce. It is really making sure that, because it's what keeps everything self-directed. It's very easy. I've been in that position as a coach where I want to give them the answer, especially if I know the answer, but it's so important to hold back and let them come to it on their own or figure it out the hard way if that's what it takes. And that relationship you can't get from just a typical training curriculum or following a facilitator guide. It takes that relationship and that kind of dynamic.
Yeah. So you also argue that while we are taught and we believe, right, that level 1 reaction is the least important level, you argue the exact opposite for coaching. What's the case for that?
Right. I mean, it's everything we just talked about, right? Like level 1 reaction is about the experience that the participant has, in this case, the coachee or the client has. And so if you don't have a foundational relationship or experience where they are engaged, they feel like they are supported, that there is that trust, then they're not going to be able to fully learn or change their perspective at level 2. They're not going to be as bought into following through on their action plans in level 3. And then, of course, aren't going to get to the results that they want to see. So I think typically we think of it just as customer experience with level 1 in traditional training programs. But with coaching, level 1, because there is no training program, it's the conversations that you have. There aren't slide decks. There aren't things to fall back on. It is, do you have that level of trust? And can you have that relationship that spurs those kinds of transformative conversations?
So for a skeptic who hears the word relationship and thinks soft, unmeasurable, nice to have, what would you say to that?
Well, I would say, let me turn to my book chapter. That's why I literally asked you. I was looking at this ahead of our call. I was like, this is actually pretty solid. It's been a minute since I reread it. just to give you some ideas of how you can make that more measurable, right? We have an example level 1 survey questionnaire in the book on page 253 if you're following along. And it gives a disagree to agree, like 1 to 4 scale. And so that helps you quantify it if you're kind of giving some kind of Likert scale. And the questions that you might ask the client or the coachee sound like, I was engaged in the coaching process. My coach is supportive of me and my goals. I trust my coach to help me achieve my goals. I have a strong working alliance with my coach. My coach has made my life or work better. You can obviously change those questions, but if you are trying to understand specific elements to that relationship, you can add those kinds of questions and make it measurable, just like, we talk about with anything that seems not measurable. You can, that's a quantitative way to look at it with a Likert scale, but you could also make an open-ended questions, like describe the relationship that you have with your coach, and you can do a thematic analysis instead. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. Obviously, the coach probably shouldn't be the one administering the survey, because that then probably adds some
Yes. Not what we would recommend.
Bias. But it is measurable enough to get a sense.
Yeah, for sure. So the relationship is the intervention. Then the environment around it shouldn't be a backdrop. It's actually a precondition. And you're clear in the chapter that coaching doesn't happen in a vacuum. So what has to be true in an organization before coaching can even take root?
There has to be a level of autonomy, because again, the whole point of the coaching process is that it is self-directed. And so if someone is trying to tell that person what to do, how to do it, it's inherently not coaching, right? Maybe it's training, maybe it's mentoring, but there needs to be an environment where autonomy, creativity, resourcefulness is part of the culture and encouraged. It's encouraged that they think of new ideas, that they're not going to be penalized for trying something new. Again, kind of goes back to more of the psychological safety from the environment side of things, because in coaching, you are going to fail when you first try something new, or at least majority of the time. Okay. Maybe there's some people that are perfect at every single thing they do whenever they want to do it.
Not
but,
exactly.
But
me.
As much as I'd like to.
Right.
Yeah. So they have to feel like they are supported by leadership, supported in the way that they spend their time, supported in trying new things, even if it doesn't guarantee an outcome that is desirable, right? That's why we evaluate, to make sure that if it's not working, that we can pivot, but there has to be room for exploration, which means there's going to be a level of uncertainty in the process, and not every organization is comfortable with uncertainty.
Right. So there's a phrase that gets thrown around a lot. I actually even maybe said it earlier today. Manager as a coach, right? A lot of organizations are trying to move to this sort of idea and model. What does it actually take to get a manager to stop prescribing solutions and start asking questions?
It takes just that. It's a behavior change on the manager's end, right? I think managers probably feel a lot of pressure to have all the answers and to be able to solve all the problems that their team faces. And it takes practice. Having been a coach where I want to give them the answers, that is the number one thing that I've had to work on, is not immediately jumping in to solve the problem once I think I have an answer or I have an idea, and I want to take the discomfort away that this coachee or that I am feeling in that discovery process. But it has to it has to be done. You have to sit in discomfort and ask questions more than you're prescribing answers. I think, the question that you choose, maybe there's, a list of questions you can look at ahead of time if you're not sure what the best questions could be. I mean, there's all kinds of coaching programs on good coaching questions. I mean, you can Google it. You can use AI to kind of solve some of that if you're worried about what questions to ask. But ultimately, it is just the behavior change in the communication during a one-on-one meeting, for example, where a manager is asking those prompting questions to promote discovery, promote ideas, rather than providing them.
Mm-hmm. I think so one of the other conversations I had earlier today was about whether or not even the manager even wants to step into this role of managing people, or, oftentimes managers get promoted because they want an increase in pay, right? They were really good at their job. And now you have this thing where you have to manage people, and they maybe never wanted to actually manage people. Like, I will tell you right now, I'm a terrible manager. I'm a great leader. I'm a terrible manager, as evidence. You probably say this about me. But I think there is a thing of like, what do we inherently like to do? And what is our best role? And sometimes we just want to like keep doing what we do and just, be a super user or high power user. We tend to promote those people. And then we're like, they're really terrible at coaching, or they're not great at being a people manager. It's like, yeah, well, first of all, what resources did you give them to help them be a better manager? And maybe that's just not, like we subscribe to Clifton strengths, right? Maybe it's just not one of their strengths. Like, that's not their thing. And it feels unfair to punish them for not being a great coach when that's not really their strength, but they have a lot of amazing other strengths, but they're being forced into this role because it's either this role or stay at your pay, stay at your role, or go somewhere else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So tell me about the best coach you've ever had. What made them? Who made them? I mean, maybe not their parents, but you know what I mean. What made them a great coach? Or maybe one that you've observed also.
Yeah. Oh, that's a hard question because I feel like I have so many good coaches that come to mind. I will say one of my favorite coaches was when I was going through my coaching certification for to become an Enneagram coach, which is a little bit more on like the life coaching, personal development kind of thing. But honestly, personalities are personalities at work too. It's very applicable everywhere. But in that process to become a coach, we had a coach. We got to be a coachee and have that experience on our side. And the coach that I had, I ended up, even after the program, signing up for individual coaching sessions with her afterwards, because she did such a good job of embodying letting me sit in the discomfort of the learning process. I think that, that's one of the things that we talk about in the book when it comes to level 2 is not just what do you need to learn or what do you need to practice to get to the results that you want or to change the behaviors that you want to see changed, but what kind of mindset shifts do you need to have when it comes to your attitude, your confidence, your commitment. Mm-hmm. And she really helped call out a lot of the mindsets and like limiting beliefs that she would hear. And I would, say them as if they were true, right? And she would call out and help me see the assumptions I was making, the beliefs that I was limited in, and then held space for me to be uncomfortable, realizing like, oh, wow, I've been operating in this mindset or worldview, and that's not actually true.
Mhm.
Inherently, it's not true. It's just a belief I picked up along the way. And that kind of shift can be really disorienting at times, right? And so she
Mhm.
didn't jump in to say like, "Oh, but it's okay," or "You're gonna figure it out," or, she wasn't a cheerleader, but she embodied her own, um, like, groundedness
Mhm.
in the process that helped me also do that. So she, like, listened really well, reflected back some really interesting insights that she heard, and also gave me the space to feel whatever I needed to feel and learn whatever I needed to learn in the process.
I love that. And I think when we think about what level two really is, you know, that's probably the hardest when we think about how do we apply level two beyond training programs. Um, and we have to rethink what level two really is. And what level two is about readiness and capability. And part of readiness
Mhm.
is mindset. And we don't necessarily measure mindset um, inherently. And I think that's probably the biggest unlock. Like when we think about, especially like attitude, right? As one of the five pieces or five components, excuse me, a level two that we measure, and commitment and confidence. Like that's where like the mindset piece really comes in, and it's so important that we
Mhm.
realize that we need to have that part of the challenge that we're doing is um, adjusting folks' mindsets, and minds and brains are a really hard thing to change, and we just don't. Unfortunately, I think we all know it intellectually inherently, but the realities of work and the organizations that we work in and the executives that we work with don't allow for time that people need to process and make that space. It's like, I trained you today. You need to learn that skill and be an expert at it tomorrow. Um,
Mhm.
and that's just not the way that it works.
Yeah.
So I want to bring it home to what this episode's about. And I think when we really think about what the entire book is truly about, evaluation is the unlock for performance. I mean, I get it, it's also in the title, y'all, but truly, if you want people to perform, you have to know what's working, what's not, and you have to be able to adjust when things aren't working so that you do preserve your investments. So, Jordan, how does treating coaching as a measurable relationship first intervention move it from a nice perk, which I think a lot of people think of coaching? Like, it's funny that executive coaching gets so funded, but then individual contributor coaching is like a nice perk and perhaps sometimes like a benefit in a job description. So, how do we move it from that to something that leaders will actually fund?
Mm. I mean, I think that's hard because it does depend on the culture, right?
Mm.
If there Like I said earlier, if it doesn't exist in a culture or an environment where the autonomy, the trust, the exploration is supported, then you know what? Don't fund it actually, because it's not gonna work. I mean, I'll say it, right? But I think if the organization is realizing that people are leaving, people aren't happy, ideas have stalled, the general morale is low, coaching is an excellent way to provide that support. And I would make it probably optional to begin if you're doing like a pilot program, like
Mhm.
have people sign up for it on their own rather than, like you said, be voluntold to do it, because then it's already setting the standard that it is a control strategy, right?
Yeah.
And it's going to kind of close off that innovation energy that we're looking for.
Hmm.
Um, but just like anything, I think talk to leaders about it in the way that is in their language. What do they
Hmm.
value? What are the things keeping them up at night? And connect the dots between the research on how coaching actually boosts productivity, boosts sales, boosts retention. And then maybe start with a pilot program. choose people from a variety of experience, a variety of roles, a variety of tenure in the organization, and see how it goes, get their feedback, use evaluation as that experiment and test the hypothesis. Make sure that coaches are adequately trained to be able to do that, because a lot of it depends on, right? Are they actually going to coach, or are they going to try to give answers the whole time? So I know that's not like a one size fits all answer, but I don't think that innovation and performance is. I think it is dependent on the organization. It depends on the context, just like we talk about the performance environment throughout the whole book, and coaching is no different. So start small, think about the words, the language that's going to resonate with leadership, and test it out.
Again, a conversation we had earlier today is the idea that, we often want to just create this like massive change, we want to apply an intervention to the entire organization and assume everyone wants to buy into it. You got to create the proof first. You got to do the test batch, right? So do it small, maybe just for your team, show what works, measure it. That is how you get more people on your side. Everyone wants data. And data does not just mean numbers, right? It's stories and all of that, experiences, testimonials, whatever. That is all data that will get people to understand, oh yeah, you know what? There is something here, and now we can grow and scale it. Like the conversation earlier was, hey, we are going to do this for this area of the business. And if it works well, then we can scale it. We can take it as the blueprint and then scale it from there, instead of trying to scale an entire leadership development program throughout an entire organization. There's so much change happening in our organizations, in the world, and implementing a new initiative, it can be a lot, and people are weary because it's like, oh, another one. We're gonna do something else. We're gonna try something new, and you don't know what people's experiences have been with coaching in the past. So it's so much easier to start smaller and then scale out from there, as opposed to just trying to do everything at once. Again, like we were talking about this morning about the conversation of like how Spain won the World Cup, right? And it's like their style of play is boring because they're possessing the ball and they're just passing back and forth. They're not like, kicking it, punting it into the goal. But those leading indicators, when you're tracking them, equal lagging indicators, because you're controlling the leading indicators and you're controlling the environment. And so the more that we can do those sorts of things, I think we start to see more success in the future. I want to touch on quickly the way that you ended the chapter. So you had 2 coaching questions. What options do you see in front of you? What do you want to commit to trying? So for a listener on the fence about coaching, what's the one first step that they could take?
Buy the book, read the chapter, of course.
Thank you. Thank you. Trained well. I didn't even have to train her.
But really, I mean, it's helpful to have a reference. It really is. Always. Whether it's ours or not. Like, I think learning a little bit more about coaching, if it's brand new to you, if any of this sounds confusing, because I know, when I first started learning about coaching, I initially thought of it as just sports coaching, where the coach is telling the players what to do, what plays to run, or how to correct their form, etc. But when it comes to professional coaching, developmental coaching, I really can't emphasize enough that it has nothing to do with having the answers. You don't have to be a subject matter expert for whoever you're coaching, right? I don't have to have been an executive for 20, 30 years to be able to have a coaching conversation with an executive, because it's not about me, the coach, and my knowledge. It's about the questions that I can ask the person in front of me. And you can use coaching questions whenever you want. If you're just listening to, your friends have a conversation, or you're talking to your family and someone has a challenge that they're facing, rather than saying something like, oh, that's a hard challenge, have you considered going through X? Ask a question of like, how are you experiencing that challenge? What do you think could work differently? What assumptions might you be making in the process? Like, try out a few coaching questions in your everyday life with other people, and you might even build a relationship just from being a better listener and asking better questions. So, educate yourself and try a few things out. That would be my recommendation.
And for those of you wondering whether or not Jordan has coached me informally in conversation, the answer is yes. I'm thinking of the conversation you, me, and Alina had a few weeks ago. So yes, Jordan will coach me every once in a while. It's also a good way to show someone that you're actually listening, right? And you're not trying to prescribe a solution. I think sometimes I will speak for myself. I will get frustrated when I'm just venting about something and someone's trying to solve the problem for me. It's like, I want to get it out. Let me just get it out. And I appreciate being asked questions to reflect a little bit more on it and come to my own conclusion before also, being shared. Like it's good to have your past experiences and to think of something differently, like when you've experienced it. But first, I find it more helpful when I have time to really reflect on how that would work for me.
Mm-hmm.
So Jordan, I want to thank you for your time today. Thank you again for contributing your chapter. Y'all, is chapter 16 in Building a Culture of Evaluation, the new Kirkpatrick Model for Performance and Innovation. We appreciate your support, Jordan, your absolute amazing wisdom. Everyone has just such glowing things to say about how you facilitate the programs, and we have our own coaching calls as part of the Kirkpatrick Collective and how you coach through that. So I want to thank you, and y'all, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please let us know if you're implementing coaching in your organization, and we'll catch you all next time. Bye.